This is Car Chronicles Extra. Welcome to our weekly look at all things automotive. We'll start with a programming note. There won't be a show next week because of the Memorial Day holiday, so we return on June 6th and we begin a special modified summer schedule. That schedule will roughly be every other week with maybe a little bit of tweaking as events warrant, because this is, as we've said many times, an events-driven program. And there have been a lot of events in the past week. Let's start with an annual report on how suppliers and automakers, how their relationship is. And it's a relationship that's been up and down over the past couple of years, and it seems to be on an up note again.
The U.S. automotive OEMs have continued to improve, Chrysler particularly at an increasing rate. Nissan and Toyota have flattened. In the case of Toyota, I think they bottomed out. And Honda keeps, for inexplicable reasons, continues to drop.
Toyota obviously has had a couple of big distractions the last few years.
Oh yeah, there's no question about that, and I know for a fact that it certainly has caused them to put less emphasis on their supplier relations than they would otherwise. But nonetheless, they are still very, very concerned about the drop, and I know that they are working very, very hard to turn it around, and it appears that that has begun.
So among the three domestics, if you could break them out, is Ford still on top among the three?
Yep, Ford is unquestionably on top of the three and continues in third place overall ahead of Nissan. It improved, but at a decreasing rate. General Motors continued to improve, but also at a decreasing rate in a very strong position, again above Chrysler, who, interestingly enough, for his second year, significantly improved. But it is still in last place.
But Chrysler had the furthest to go as well.
Oh yes, I mean it had no place to go but up. There's no question about that.
Give me a headline to sum it all up.
I think the appropriate headline is that the auto industry as a whole is going to be better. Suppliers are going to benefit from all of the movement that each of the OEMs have toward working with them. And I think it's going to make for an interesting year for both the domestics and the Japanese.
Is it possible that suppliers are just happier because they've been through such a rough time and they're no longer afraid of going out of business?
Well, I think clearly now that they're making money is important for them. But it's still, that doesn't impact the working relations. It's how the OEMs work with them. It makes it a lot easier and more enjoyable to make the money under good working relations than it does under poor. But it isn't. One important point that is critical is that it isn't the money that changes their attitudes to the working relations. And the data suggests that unquestionably the OEMs are making that change. And everyone will end up benefiting because of it.
Let's move on now to an economy that's recovering a little bit faster than a lot of people expected. And every year, the consulting firm A.T. Kearney takes the pulse of the auto industry and takes a look at where things are headed. And now they're saying that they think we'll return to normal, around a 16 million sales rate, in about 2 years.
If you look at the macroeconomic trends, as the economy recovers, we see vehicle sales increasing. We also don't really see a good substitute for vehicle transportation. If you look at what's been happening over the last couple of years, we don't see a mass reurbanization of our cities and people leaving the suburbs where they can give up their cars. We don't see public transportation as being a viable alternative to traveling by car. So we know that the demand is out there, and we basically see as economic conditions improve, people will go back to buying new cars.
And from your studies, from your statistics, there's a lot of pent-up demand out there, so people can't wait forever.
That's right. The average age of the vehicle park is approaching 10.4 years. And we estimate there's about 32 million units of new and used pent-up demand that's accumulated since 2007. So eventually people will have to go back and buy cars, whether it's new cars or used cars. So of that 32, we think 9 million will materialize over the next 5 to 7 years as the economy comes back.
And you mentioned that the earthquake in Japan has opened up a pretty large opportunity for sales that are up for grabs that wouldn't have been otherwise. If you could explain that.
Yeah, basically from our calculations, we took a look at the total lost production that was a result of the Japanese earthquake and ensuing tsunami and calculated about 197,000 customers are currently up for grabs. And what we mean by that is there are certain customers who are brand loyal and they will wait basically for the OEMs to return availability of the models that they want to buy. But approximately 197,000 as of, let's say, last week are customers that potentially could be up for grabs by an OEM that has product when their current brand OEM does not.
Who might be the OEMs that might pick up those customers?
So,
the best chance?
the best opportunities would be traditionally the Detroit 3 OEMs, or those that have been certainly not affected as much as the Japanese OEMs have been as part of the earthquake disaster.
And they have more competitive small car offerings than they've had in the past, too.
It's a very competitive market overall, I think, and so as they have the ability to flex their capacity to provide the vehicles that people want to buy, they certainly stand an opportunity to gain.
Now, let's talk steel. The American Iron and Steel Institute holding their annual Great Designs in Steel Conference. Kind of an update on the latest technology having to do with something that really makes up most of your vehicle.
We're going to do something special this year. We actually have a new engineering study, much like the one that kicked off our first Great Designs in Steel in 2002. This study is called Future Steel Vehicle, and it deals with how to best use steel in these newer powertrains, like electric vehicles like the Nissan Leaf, or plug-in hybrids like the Volt, or possibly even hydrogen fuel cell cars. So we're looking at new steels, new lightweighting technology, new optimization computer methods, and eventually just lightweighting concepts for vehicles. And these also apply to internal combustion powertrains as well.
So how would steel be used differently in vehicles like that? I know weight is certainly one thing.
Weight is key, but we're also now able to make more what we call ultra-high strength steel. So these are the steels that can provide amazing strength at very light section weight, so that we can strengthen the upper canopy of a vehicle to prevent the roof crush and rollover conditions that these vehicles now have to attain without adding extra mass. And we can manage the crash energy on frontal and rear also at light vehicle masses as well. We're getting ready for the onslaught of tighter fuel economy rules, and we think that doing something like this study will help portray steel in a more engineering, let's call it a better light than those that think about steel in the older tradition. And steel can be a lightweighting material if it's used properly with the right tools.
And that's very important as customers downsize, too.
Yeah, and I think that downsizing, the footprint cafe rule that kind of sets the fuel economy based on footprint really encourages mass reduction. Because if you're going to save mass, you're also going to save fuel economy at a given footprint, and that's what the rule is all about.
Now let's take a spin in the Fiat 500. You got to admit, the looks are pretty alluring. It's not like anything else on the road, at least here in the United States. But living with a vehicle is a little different because it definitely is small. Let's take a look inside. Very nice, very upscale interior, and enough room in the front seat, but the back seat has practically no room and there is very little cargo area. So I kind of see this as a vehicle for somebody who wants something small and different, but I think it's definitely going to be hurt by a lack of power and a lack of utility. And yes, I did say power because I was expecting more from the 101 horsepower engine. Now, it does have a sport mode that helps some on the freeway, but I was expecting more the golf cart kind of performance you get with the Mini, and it's just not there. But my vehicle did have very good fuel economy, 30 city, 38 highway with the manual transmission. So let's sum it all up. The Fiat 500, it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see who buys this because it definitely is going to be a test of Americans' willingness to downsize. And right now, the jury is still out on that. That's our program this week. Again, a reminder, we're taking Memorial Day off. We'll be back with a brand new program on June 6th, and that will start our special summer schedule of bi-weekly programs. I'm Auto Beat reporter Jeff Gilbert. Thanks for joining us.